Welcome, everyone. Happy MLK Day for those of you in the US. And yeah, Osquery. Thank you, Stefano. I think you created the minutes framework, so awesome. Announcements and highlights. Shout out to Teddy for continuing to be awesome. Is he the kid yet?
Yeah, it happened.
Nice.
So Teddy's out for a while because he has entered the club of fatherhood. Yay, Teddy, we love you. Congrats, buddy.
Well, congratulations to Ted. That's really exciting.
And the other thing we noted here is a shout out to, sorry if I get the username wrong, Farfella for all of the Windows UTF-8, UTF-16 string manipulation stuff. That looks like a pretty solid PR coming in. So shout out on that one.
Oh, thanks.
So any PRs people want to bring up or talk through?
I think we can start with that one, 6190.
You're talking about the UTF-8 one?
Yeah.
What's there to say?
I have only briefly looked at it. So yeah, sorry, we will give you a review soon. Did we have any question in particular about this?
So maybe I can just comment a couple of train of thoughts I had when seeing it. I mean, beyond, again, thanks for getting this done. Well, I can comment that maybe I think in general it looks good. I think we might want to add some an overload for the function that transforms the boostring to string, so that it doesn't take a car pointer but directly a boostring. But yeah, this is a detail for the review that I will put it also on the PR review itself. And the other comment, the other thing I was thinking about, yeah, I'm not sure. It was how if this has any specific impact on performance, meaning needing to do this kind of conversion, because I know the alternative, which is a bigger work, but it will be actually used and to actually substitute all the uses of STD string with another type, basically, which on Windows it's already the correct bitness, and switches on Linux. But yeah, this was some random thinking, let's say, because at least if one doesn't have to remember to do these conversions, but obviously there is the downside that it's a much bigger change. On Windows, you use more memory to store these strings. This is the approach that Qt uses with its QString type. But yeah, just thinking. I was just thinking about it and was wondering if someone had some comment about this. Or
so my thought would be just to keep it as UTF-8 strings, or like a basic STD string, UTF-8 string. One of the things I want to mention is the transformations I did was only for this project, not for any of the externs. So even in the case of Boost, it's actually not going to work. So any of the external libs, because it's not going to be part of this project repo anyway to fix. So I didn't want to fix those.
Yeah.
But there will be cases where it still doesn't work. It's just that it's not a problem of Osquery, if that makes sense. Adding another string type, I'm not really sure about, if that makes sense, because I think STL string and W string are sufficient for what we're trying to do. The other thing I want to mention is W string or 16-bit or UTF-16, actually the support varies based on what OS you're using. So even though in the case of Windows, UTF-16, the white W car is actually UTF-16 now. If I remember correctly, and again, I'm not sure if we ever want to support iPhones, and my experience is from iPhone 2, like all the white version, or some of the white versions of the functions didn't work, and I wasn't sure which ones. So that's why it's safer from my perspective to keep it at 8-bit character strings, just so it's supported across more operating systems.
I already mentioned I like the Q-string approach. However, within Osquery, it makes more sense to use. I didn't clearly think through this. This is just my impression. So take it with a grain of salt. But it kind of makes more sense inside Osquery to keep the UTF-8 approach, since we may have many point of contact with other libraries that do not support UTF-16 characters. But yeah, I mean, it is not uncommon to hear about possible performance issues, which is also common in like Cygwin or Mingvu, because they do precisely this kind of conversion. And when dealing with lots of I/O on disk, you can pretty much feel this kind of overhead. So yeah, just a thought on this matter. But yeah, again, just to add, Q-strings works really well on Qt SDK. And I don't think Stefano was proposing to replace std string, but just use basic string. So we would still use STL.
So just to say, yeah, the proposal was simply to, it's a wrapper, but behind the backend is still the STL. Simply, it either switches implementation depending on the platform, but that has a cost, still a cost in theory, do exactly as Qt does, which again, QString is always a UTF-16 string behind the scene to support both Windows and other. Because I think it uses basically array of bytes and then does some magic. But yeah. But yeah, it's a big change in general, I can see. And also, as Farfella was saying, that there's still the issue of all the other libraries. So,
of these two approaches, is it easy to, like, if we merge this and then in 6 months we decide, oh, this was a performance, this had bad performance implications, how hard would it be to switch implementations?
I answer it a bit differently, which means I don't think that DSPR will add any difficulty. I mean, yeah, any difficulty in doing that work.
So this PR does not incur sort of technical or architectural debt. It just adds potentially computational overhead.
No. Yeah.
This one is actually faster than the existing one that was there. So the reason I claim this is faster is because we're actually using the OS native multi-byte to white car and white car to multi-byte. So that's handling most of the overhead you're going to encounter anyway. Like it's just doing it. It's taking care of it itself because it knows. Sorry, the folks who wrote these libraries, they've already taken care of performing all the optimizations for this. So whereas so originally there was another PR where we're using, I think, codec V from STL, which has been deprecated, and C++17, I believe. That one is actually slower because it's doing character by character. Whereas this one, you're relying on the operating system to take care of all of that. So I'm not even sure they're actually doing it character by character because they know these functions, I would say, have existed 20 plus years. So they work, like it's been validated they work, and they've actually been optimized for all of these cases.
I think the comparison and performances was against a Osquery that is using a native UTF-16 strings against a implementation that keeps converting strings back and forth.
Got it. Yes, in that case, the UTF-16 implementation will be faster because you're not having to convert back and forth. You're right.
You just said
I think it's... Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just thinking it was a matter of looking how much. I mean, if it's a small percentage, obviously, since we already have gained something, it's, I mean, we can forget about it, let's say.
You mentioned this was probably a more performant version of something else that's in a PR. Is there another PR that merging this would cause us to close?
No, it is more performant than something what we have right now with C++17 code CVT, which actually has been deprecated, I think.
Yeah, so that was another PR a couple of days back. Let me find it for you.
It's already merged, though, so it's this is an improvement over status quo.
Correct. It's the 6160, or the PR is 6187. Is that the one? Yeah, that's the one.
I think probably the people best to maybe eventually sign off on this are maybe some set of Stefano, Alessandro, and Nick, if it's got any Windows-specific stuff in it. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about it.
I mean, I haven't had a good chance to look over it. I took a quick look at it and I liked what I was seeing, but to the points about like performance trade-offs and like, is this setting us up for success in the future? I haven't thought it that far through. To me, this looked good. Like I'd encourage us to maybe be a little, I don't want to use the word reckless, but like move fast, right? And like, if it looks like it's going to be advantageous, let's check it out and give it a shot. But again, I haven't had enough time to really dig deep on it. So I'll try and give it some time tonight if I get a chance and leave a comment on it.
Yeah, I agree. The suggestion Stefano has made to change a little the interface is good. So we can avoid using the char pointers, which makes it possible to pass invite pointers. This is happening in a couple of instances here. So by having a more strong interface, I think this looks really good. And I mean, this issue with the path has been long-standing one, and it is really great to finally find a way to solve it.
Cool. So I think I'm hearing general support for it and a little bit more like people want to like noodle it in the PR a little bit, but like, I don't know. No one seems to be saying, let's not do this.
I want it now.
Yeah, given the amount of pain this has caused in the past, like, I'm very excited to see this ship.
There is Yeah, I see a lot of random Windows like format conversion bugs that trickle up. I open them and Nick usually goes, "Oh yeah."
It's just that like this has plagued us since the initial port to Windows. This has always been a problem, and like we never addressed it fully. We would kind of, I mean, this is absolutely not the correct approach. We would just kind of be like, well, it's not really supported. Sorry, rest of the world. It's just going to be a US-based product, which is, of course, totally wrong. But it was just like a matter of resources, right? Like we had other bigger bugs or bigger problems we were trying to ship.
Well, okay. Probably, I don't know, last call for discussion on 6190. Cool. So any other PRs people want to talk about?
I can talk. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I don't know if somebody else jumped on. I can talk a little bit about this flurry. Sorry, Stefano. I'm the worst.
Okay, no, there's some delay. We're just saying that it was background noise. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. I can talk a little bit about this slurry of PRs that Ted threw up right before he has now disappeared. This is pretty dope. We're seeing like the very first set of PRs being synced from internal Facebook bug fixes that we've had externally. In particular, that Carve bug fix where Carve returns empty files or hidden files. This was something that was addressed quite a while ago internally. So I'm going to do the best I can to, in some senses, commandeer these from Ted, just because he's out. I'll try very hard to stay on top of them, but as Ted is about to learn, like having a kid eats all of your free time, so I'll try to keep on top of them and get them cleaned up and get them to a state, because like, as you can see, most of it, so it's 6186, 6185, 6183. I don't think 6189 is related to that. I think that's something else. But basically, this small chunk, you can see like a lot of them are failing CI. I think Ted literally just copied them over and opened them up, the PRs, to the external repo. So there's, of course, going to be some things that like we need to change. But I'm pretty sure I have write permission on all of Ted's repos. So like I'm going to try, or all of Ted's Osquery branches. So I'm going to try to fix these up and get them to a better state. I just wanted to draw attention to that and be like, yay, we're doing the thing that we said we would do, I promise.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's really awesome to see that happening, and I hope that moving forward we can make sure that, you know, everyone who's working on Osquery out of band has opportunities and motivation to contribute the stuff back into the mainstream.
So I have another one that I'll bring up really quick, and then I'll stop talking. I super duper promise. I've had a PR open for like months now for the date time fix, and I know that Seth, you just recently opened up an issue that could benefit from this. I took another crack at this. I had originally thought we could just disable the tests on Buck for this. It's actually more involved than that. It's actually that like the build itself on Buck won't work the way that this is structured. So very unfortunately, our options to fix here are don't use Buck or restructure how the file system includes on Buck work. This is, again, something that like I'm willing to take on and take a crack at, but I'm definitely not as good at Buck as Ted is. So it might take me a bit of time before I can ship this, which is super unfortunate because it's like such a basic PR. I'm talking about 5901 in particular. So just kind of a status update on that. I'm sorry this has taken me so long to get through. I know it's incredibly basic, but this uncovered a rat's nest that I don't think anybody was ready for.
I think as I have said before, and I think generally sentiment of most of the Osquery contributors is like the primary reason we keep Buck around is because it helps a handful of wonderful people in Facebook coordinate with the open source project and, you know, contribute to it, and that's still true. So if Buck makes it easier for you to work, I am in favor of keeping Buck there.
It is something I would encourage people, like if there are other people in the community using Buck, please let us know. Please be vocal about it. Ted and I have been talking a lot lately about the value that we're getting out of this. Ted is pretty convinced that he can make the syncs that we're doing work without Buck. But like, we understand that this is a very sensitive thing. Like, we definitely do not want to undermine the amount of amazing effort that like Trail of Bits put into restructuring the build system and like dealing with all of the garbage that came out of Buck. But it was just a topic of discussion we've been kind of floating around with, that like we might be able to make this work, like make these interchanges still sync things up correctly, even in the absence of having the Buck system externally. I don't know. I'm not well versed enough on that, but it's something to bear in mind, right? Like I have a good example of a pain point of managing the Buck infra. So like if it's just me and Ted, we're the only ones using it, I really think it's worth it. And like, especially if we have a path to keep syncing without Buck, I think we need to have a very stern talk about like why we're doing this.
So this came up in office hours a little while ago,
Okay.
a couple of months ago, and I have not found or reviewed those minutes, but my recollection is that yes, the only people who use Buck are you and Teddy, and that maybe even above making it simpler to like push fixes back and forth, it just helps your workflow. Like you and Teddy were both like, yeah, we like the Buck build more, and the rest of us were like, cool, that's a good reason to keep it.
That was the case until we dropped 4.1.2, and like, for me personally, it doesn't matter. I have to do both, right? Like I don't get to pick one because I want to make sure I'm staying on top of releases. I'm pretty sure Ted's the same way. I don't think Ted has any specific clinging to Buck. Especially like, I don't know what it was that he figured out, but it seems like he's got some mechanism to make this easy to go between CMake and Buck. So that gives me the impression that like we're running out of support here. We're running out of reasons for it. I'm gonna bump that thread basically. Like I think maybe what this could be is maybe it's an issue, because like I want to make sure that everybody has a fair crack at voicing their support for this, or like voicing their caution against moving away from it. But I'm starting to feel like we're going to see a world where we come back full circle to just having CMake again.
I don't, whatever. If we want to make an issue for doing that, I'm fine with that. I feel like, I don't know, I'm not sure any of us can speak to it. Like, I think it's kind of mostly a thing that, a thing for you to grapple with. And I know that feels like a lot to like drop on you somehow, but I mean, you're basically the Buck expert in the room.
I mean, like, so suffice, I'll leave it at this, and then if I promise, again, like I said, I'll stop talking, which I always break that promise. Ted and I will keep pushing on this, and we'll keep iterating on it. I mostly just want to make sure that we're all talking about this, right? So like if Ted and I magically come along and say, hey, we're dropping support for Buck, it's not a surprise to anybody. And we also want to make sure that everybody understands, like, we really appreciate the amount of love and support that the project has now. So like if we do make this decision, it's not one we make lightly, right? Like we're not trying to undermine anybody's efforts here. So I mostly just want to make sure that we're talking about it and we're communicating about it. But I'll keep talking with Teddy. This would be further down the road, right? Because Ted's off the grid for a while. But just something, I just wanted to bump that thread. That's it.
Fono, did you have something you wanted to raise for another PR? Stefano, did you have a thing you were raising?
I didn't hear you were calling me. So sorry, what was the question?
Did you have a PR you wanted to talk about? You and Nick were like stepping on each other at the beginning of this.
No. Nothing.
Anyone else?
I promised an eBPF pull request. I'm working on it as I changed goal. So I didn't make it yet. I'm updating some of my libraries. And yeah, Seth and I were thinking about what we could start implementing first. And we thought that having some kind of DNS monitoring or read line monitoring, so you can get in real time, so an event-based table, what happens inside Bash could be a nice start. So for this, I'm updating the libraries to support uprobes.
My bias is still, I find the idea of DNS lookup super interesting because while we have things like open sockets, that only gets you IP endpoints, and given how often you see SNI these days, DNS lookups are a little bit more interesting from a CNC standpoint, at least, to me.
Yeah, and hooking into readline is potentially interesting because you may have hosts that are not supposed to be interactive. And if you receive an event on this table, meaning that you can see people typing bash commands, you know something is going on that host. So it can be interesting to determine whether a machine has been breached or not.
Would that work if things were executing under binsh?
I don't know how it works, but yeah, you can. I mean, I know that the read line is used by Bash. You can pretty much use any symbol you want on any library. So you can make this work on SH or ZSH and so on.
Yeah, I don't think SH links against it reliably, but I'm not totally sure.
The symbol lookup will be dynamic, so we will not hard code offsets or anything. So we can just work the import table of the binary and see what is calling, and then we can do that if you want. And this is, of course, system-wide, so it doesn't have to be initialized before the shells.
I think when we were talking before, we weren't sure anyone was using the existing BPF functionality, although maybe it's used inside Facebook.
No, sorry, it took me too long to unmute. No, we don't use that internally at Facebook, at least not that I'm aware of. We do use other auditing, but it's not with Osquery. And in our deployments where we would use it, I think we have it enabled, but I'm not specifically sure who's using that data right now.
Okay, I think it only merged maybe a year ago. It merged during the experimental period, if I remember right.
The people who were initially involved with that, it's like Philippe and Alexander, like they've moved on to other teams and they're working on other stuff now. So I'd be really surprised if we're using that.
It may make it reasonable for you just to rip it out completely, Alessandro.
If it is not used by anyone, and if internally has been disabled, but it seems like Nick mentioned someone is potentially using it.
I think people outside of Facebook might be using it. I don't think it's fair to say that just because we're not using it doesn't mean anybody.
Yeah. I mean, we would provide a replacement.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't worry a huge amount about that being that. If you're going to replace it, I'd say probably just start doing it. If you really wanted to be sure, you could hit up Philippe or Alexander who would know if anybody was using it. But I haven't heard of anyone using eBPF or Linux process events with Osquery for that matter.
I see. Do you know if there is anyone we can have to review the pull request when we are done? I mean, it would be nice to make something that is usable not just for us, but also interesting for Facebook.
Yeah. I can look around. I can ask around. Like the people I would recommend would be Alexander, but I don't know how responsive he's been on GitHub lately, or like Slack or any of the other mechanisms you have for him. You could try and ping Brian if you really want to, but he's the same way. Like I don't know how much time he has to dedicate to this, so I'm not sure, man. I'm sorry. We might have to try to find other people at other companies or something to do the heavy lifting on this one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. I know that's not an enjoyable answer.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, don't worry.
Yeah.
Other PRs? Okay, so next item on our agenda is the 420 release milestone. So we could try and release at the end of February to stick with a reasonably regular schedule. Seems reasonable to aim for that, especially if we get some of these Windows fixes in. Generally, just slow improvements are certainly good. We don't need a major thing. There's a bunch of kind of release conversation that's floating around both in office hours and issues around like how do we make these processes better. And then we have this kind of other somewhat painful question about like, can we actually cut a real release without Teddy right now? I mean, we can to some degree, but like I don't think we can actually go through the signing and pushing live process.
So if it was towards the end of February and like early March, I think Teddy will be back to an extent that he could sign things for us. We can make the release happen, and like we can get signing keys from Ted. Like we can make the signing of that work, especially if it's further away from right now. I don't know what date he's planning to come back, but I think that it's going to be like the end of February, the beginning of March. I think that would work. I would just, yeah, maybe not worry too much about that. I think that'll be okay.
Okay, well, why don't I just I'll slap a date on this milestone and
can we shoot for? What if we just shoot for like March 1st? Because that's like the
end of February.
Sure.
I think
like if you want that date. Yeah.
You know, if we slip, we slip. It's just kind of an internal focus deadline, not a. Is there some focus on this event that we want to have? Like,
what you mean?
well, do we have a theme for this?
I feel like TLC for Windows is kind of how because like we have a lot of stuff floating around for Windows right now, and it's like we're giving Windows a lot of love. Close to February, close to Valentine's Day, maybe it's like, "Hey Windows, how you doing?"
It doesn't have to be catchy. Just it might just be whatever bug fixes we've gotten in by then, and they may be primarily driven by some of the things we uncover on Windows.
I mean, again, I think one of the major focus probably it's still having the OpenSSL library updated because it's end of life, and yeah, for all the other issues I see, there's a lot of Windows love in general. So TLS test, well, the generic part I see TLS test, maybe converting from boost regex to STD regex and things like that. But
Where were we with the OpenSSL stuff? I don't remember. That still has like, we need to pull some of the packages into the source layer.
Yeah, there's a couple of packages for Windows, and
Did we make a bug for that?
No, because okay, I should add myself an action item. Yeah, I should have done that. Yep.
Okay, so you'll make a bug and you'll shove it into the 420 milestone.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So we list exactly what we miss. But I mean, for the rest, I know we are still discussing, but we are still currently in. I mean, since study is occupied, we can maybe not be as regular as we want to be. But I think it will be still good to decide kind of a time period we want to how the process should in theory work, at least in theory. Meaning that I know we had some discussion again on that issue, for instance, to wait 1 to 2 weeks after we release as pre-release. Plus, we also want to add some delay to push the packages into the repo, so that if there are issues again, we don't diffuse them too much, basically. And though this means that weeks add up and we go into the next month already, which is, I mean, I just want to understand when things are, what's the cadence there, basically. So, for instance, if we decide that we want to do something by the end of February and we want to have a week of to see if there are issues after the pre-release, does it mean we release a week before the last day of February, so that we use that week to see if everything is good, and then we additionally wait another week, this time in the next month, kinda, to then push the packages? Does this seem good? Or again, because this discussion I think has been mainly between you, maybe Seth, and Teddy. So, but I'm not sure what was the conclusions. Yeah,
we've had a couple of conversations, and they're spread out across a couple of GitHub issues, a couple of gists, a couple of office hours. The current process as it stands, the current expected process as it stands, it's like, it's in a gist somewhere, but like reading out of my notes, right, is roughly we make a milestone, and then we kind of go through the milestone, we make an issue, and all that's kind of boring. We take builds, we sign the builds, and we upload the builds, and we sort of flag them all as pre-release. We go through some testing cycle, and that testing cycle is a fairly manual one. You know, we basically say, yo people, do these things look good? And we kind of like wait to hear issues. And that's usually like a week to 2, mostly depends on how on top of it we are. And then we promote it to stable. And I don't know that, I'm really hesitant to try and get super formal about how long these testing periods are. Like I kind of want to, but I feel like there's just so much of this that isn't automated yet that it's hard. Like I don't want to like make firm commitments.
I also think that like it's worth it to have the more formal releases, like put less effort and less emphasis on those. Like keep striving towards automation for like nightly builds or weekly builds, and then have feedback mechanisms so we know whether or not those are good, and encourage people to get on purely automated upstream master builds. And like we can tag formal releases, like this is the goal, right? Like we want to drive the ship towards this. And if we get to this state, then like once a month, we will, you know, stamp and sign a formal release if we have reason to believe, like saying like a week's worth of reason to believe that we're stable, tag a stable release. But like, I personally really like the flow that we've got. Like Seth, what you're describing, this is exactly how we used to do it internally. Is we deploy it everywhere internally, let it soak for like a week or two, and if no one yelled at us, stable, tag it, ship it, we're done. And like, yeah, that's not very formal. That's maybe not the best way to do it, but like, it's at least you have the assurances of the Facebook fleet that we have stability. So I would really encourage us to make the formal release process just be like a side note. And like, look, man, we focus on continuous build, continuous deploy, and here are nightly and weekly packages. And if you want stable, you can get it like an LTS model, right? Like we'll tag an LTS state release, but really what we focus on is this like master build that's always publicly available.
I would love to sort of get closer to that model. I think there's a surprising amount of automation work that sort of is, I don't know.
Sorry,
this is all like stuff this is stuff I do in my day job, but like it's hard for me to do it in my not day job.
So, I mean, I think it all makes sense, especially. I mean, the objective I was trying to, in general, achieve is to have some regularity, not inside, not. So we shouldn't decide on a specific. Let's say not a specific release process, as long as we can give to the outside a sort of again regularity on the releases. And again, obviously, everyone has. I mean, there can be delays of any sorts. That's understandable, obviously, but if this is not currently, this doesn't permit us to give this kind of regularity. What model we have to use then, or kind of follow? So something like Nick was saying, though, for instance, the LTS idea means that we have to have a separate branch where we port fixes and things like that, which is not something we are currently doing. So
I don't think we need to have a separate branch to have an LTS model. I mean, and to some degree, LTS is a little bit of a misnomer because we're an open source project. We don't really, like, as Osquery, we do not provide support.
Maybe LTS is the wrong, like, I didn't mean it like, it's a good call. I just mean to say, like, this is a known good commit, right? Like, from this commit, you've got good stability. At least we know there's not any serious bugs and you're solid. And we just keep, like, bumping that up as we go.
I think we can absolutely get there, right? You can imagine, like, the thing I'd like to do as sort of an intermediary is if we move to nightly builds or CI-based build. No, nightly might be nightly or might be per check-in. Like, it kind of doesn't matter, right? But if we have something that looks a bit like a nightly build, we base the release off of that, right? We basically say, oh, you know, here's the build. Like, we're not going to say, Teddy, go make a blessed build, right? We should be just saying, let's go pull the thing out of CI and rubber stamp it and ship it.
I think, Stefano, to your point, I think it would make sense to have a doc somewhere that has like loose definitions that say, hey, we as a community release roughly every quarter, right? So like you can expect that once a quarter, we should have a stable release for you. That's a major bump, right? Or like, you know, like loose guidelines that we may or may not conform to all the time, but we will try very hard. So like when you see a milestone, you should probably assume that that milestone will correlate with a stable release in a month, right? Or something like that. I think it would be worth having that. So like you said, so people external to the project are like, oh, I know roughly what their cadence is. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, that was that was what I was trying to suggest. Yep.
I'm concerned that we still don't really have enough folks who are willing to work with the bleeding edge and shake out what the bugs are to actually, you know, achieve such a thing.
Yeah, if there was a nightly release right now, how many people would deploy that to their fleets?
I don't think anybody would.
I mean, so the Collide infrastructure isn't automated enough for me to deploy an Osquery nightly release. But I'd certainly sort of, when I remember, which isn't going to be daily, push an unstable release to the Collide beta channel. But you know, that tends to be more of a like, right around when we actually like say, hey, let's make a release, I go and do a thing. But I could look at automating that, but our beta test fleet isn't, hundreds of thousands. It's,
well,
tens.
so like, to be clear, like we would push this to tiers, right? Like we wouldn't push it immediately to all of the fleet. We would do these stage deploys. It's a huge amount of work, and like I'm definitely standing on the shoulders of giants by being able to do this. But like at the height of this, when we still had Mitchell with us, as soon as we had new commits pushed, we would automatically push that to about 100 machines. But these were like client laptops that we trusted. We had tried to start pushing this to servers and server fleets to get it like deployed out more rapidly to Linux prod hosts. We just never did it. Or like, it was not a matter of limiting capability. It was a matter of just somebody pulling the trigger. But this is a concept that is pretty prevalent at Facebook. And I don't have as much power as I used to wield, but I would really encourage people to think about trying it. Like not your whole fleet, obviously, but like doing nightly pushes to a subset of hosts. It's incredibly valuable for finding bugs and like a feedback mechanism, right?
I mean, absolutely. This is like your 5, 10, 50, 100% rollout models. I think the harder part is, of the people in this meeting, there's not a good fit, right? Like Collide, we can push it to some of our beta devices, and then roll it out. But like, it's not super automated, and like Osquery just doesn't churn fast enough. And I put a little bit more into pushing the launcher out on that kind of schedule. Facebook probably does this, but Facebook maintains an internal fork of Osquery. Trail of Bits, I'm not sure they quite can do that. Upticks isn't in the room right now. So like it's sort of like we get into a question of like who actually, it's this weird thing because like fundamentally we are maintaining an open source software that's used by lots of people, but there's an impedance mismatch there.
So, I see this as a bit of a commons problem. Like, this is something that affects everyone, and yet it requires a lot of work from, a couple of organizations or a couple of individual contributors to achieve such things. And, one idea that I have for this kind of thing is now that Osquery is a, independent organization of the Linux Foundation, and we have the ability to accept funding, like one thing that we could try to do is fundraise to be able to pay some people, maybe folks who are on this call and maybe others, to build the kind of testing infrastructure that we would need to be able to better do this kind of thing. And I wonder if, using a model like that and finding a couple of corporate sponsors who are willing to put in, some decent sums of money, but certainly a lot less than, what it costs them to pay a full-time engineer. And if we can find a few of those, we could really well fund such, quote, commons project.
So this is a really good discussion. I don't mean to do this, but I've got 5 minutes before I have to go to another meeting. So I kind of want to bump us to the TSC update and skip the build speed caching because I have a sort of announcement. But I'll kind of like leave it open. Is that okay with everybody if we do that? And ZWAS, I'm really sorry to interrupt that because like I want to talk about that. I think it's a great idea to maybe find companies willing to donate resources in terms of like engineering time. I would absolutely sign up to write code and like help do that. To me, the problem always comes back to time, right? So like that's a great idea, and I think we should pursue it further. So as a quick update, yeah, I wanted to mention Osquery at scale is like tomorrow. I really hope that we have some people. So I'm very, very excited to see ZWAS is going. Like, I think it's a good opportunity for us to be involved. I've been talking with Mishan and Milan and Nishant from Upticks. I think it's a great opportunity for yet another conference to kind of like exist. And I think we should try to help them out or like support it if we can. But one thing that is kind of an update to the TSC, I've been talking with Ryan Wilson a lot at Facebook. He has agreed that he is down to like let it go and give it to me. So like, I don't know what the formal process is here or like how we would approach this. I've been talking with Ted a lot. I would be very happy to take a seat on the small council and kind of like formally be a part of the involvement. I don't know if there's something we have to do. I don't know if there's paperwork or if somebody hates that idea and wants to push back on it. We can have that discussion. But I wanted to bring this up. Thank you, Alessandro. And the 4 minutes that we have left, and just kind of make sure that everybody's aware I'm going to be taking over Ryan's seat on the small council.
I mean, to me, that's great news because, you know, you are really involved and we haven't seen much of Ryan. So we want folks who are involved as much as possible.
Great.
I'll say a couple of things. I know you're running, so these are all maybe open-ended thoughts, right? Personally, general approval, like you're super involved. You've got history here, and like, I don't know, you're kind of half of the main Windows team or something. I don't think Ryan has really ever picked up involvement. So sort of right now, active TSC members are like Teddy, me, Zach, Alessandro, and group's pretty inactive these days. So maybe a thought for sort of the larger community, or this probably, yeah, some things for us to think about. We've never figured out how to change members of the TSC. That was always like a to-do item. Are we gonna have elections? Are we gonna have 1 year, 2 year terms? Are we gonna be like, yeah, this is fine. We're like a okay group of people, it goes forward. So there's an open question there. Do we think about adding in Nick and taking off Teddy, having Nick and Teddy? I'm cool with having Nick and Teddy here. It takes us to an even number officially, which isn't totally ideal, but like in practice, it's probably fine. So I don't know, just things we should talk through.
I do think it's a good idea to document what it means to be a part of the small council. I mean, it feels pretty vague and generic. It's like you were a core member of this community and what we're doing here. But it might be good to explicitly document stuff like, you know, how many companies are allowed? How many seats does a company get? Are there considerations we want to have about stuff like that? I don't know who's the right person or what we should do, like what the best outlet is for that. But I do agree it's probably a good idea to at least reason through those things or like have loose ideas.
So practically speaking, there is zero difference between being on the TSC and being a core contributor these days. I don't think we've ever hit something where like the TSC has had to vote on something.
Well, I would say the effective difference is that the TSC has commit access to the repository currently. And beyond that, we have not really established much. So, I mean, you guys are both absolutely right that we need to establish more of what these things mean. We need to build more roadmap and that kind of stuff. And, you know, in my eyes, I don't think that we need to formalize all of the processes immediately. I think we have bigger priorities than formalizing the processes around how the TSC works. Just because in my eyes, there's not that much controversial going on. I don't think there's much disagreement between members of the TSC or between decisions that the TSC is making, which are basically, you know, none that the TSC is making separately as of right now, and what the community wants. So, I mean, I think, yes, we need to build all of that stuff, but to me, it's not a top priority.
I agree. I think as long as we can work together reasonably well, we can put it off longer and longer. I have two thoughts, or maybe one thought, and then I got to bounce, or kind of two thoughts. So QueryCon, I don't know if it's coming up. I don't know who's doing it, but that might be a good opportunity for the small council to all get in a room together and try to at least agree on some of these things if we need to do that. I don't know if we need to, as to Zach's point. But the other bit was like, we had talked about Osquery at scale a while ago and like being kind of confused. I don't know if we ever addressed it again in office hours, but I'm kind of for it. I think it's a good idea. Like they're really trying hard to keep the focus on just using Osquery or being on the other end of like not development or not necessarily deployment, but good use cases. It seemed like we got to a state of not being sure what they were doing or why they were here. I want to encourage us to try to look at it as like, this is another good opportunity for new use cases and like new community engagement and new members to show up. Because from my perspective, like they have good people coming to give talks. I really Unfortunately, like travel's hard for me right now, but I think it's cool that they're doing it. Like, I think we should try to support them if possible. But if we do have, if someone is pioneering QueryCon this year, I think we should think about if the small council can all make it, maybe we can like all go out for beers or to a coffee shop or something. Just kind of like, if there are things like this, we need to sort out like, what does it mean to be on a small council? We can try to iron through those. Thank you, everyone. I got to bail. Cheers.
Well,
Zach, as one point of order, more than just the TSC has commit access.
Sorry, what's that?
There's more people than just the TSC with commit access.
Oh, is that the case? Okay.
Yes. For example, Stefano, a chunk of Facebook has commit access. I think those are probably the obvious exceptions right now.
Okay, cool. Well, okay, so I mean, I guess the reality is that the TSC exists and is thought to be in a leadership position, but doesn't have specifically defined responsibilities at this time.
Mostly it seems to look like I run around and try and get code signing certificates.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's some level of claimed authority that we can use to try and get stuff done. But I guess, you know, that leads into, I'm giving a talk at Osquery at Scale, unrelated to any of these issues, but I'd like to just give a little bit of an update on what's going on with the TSC and the project. So in my eyes, the things that folks should know are like, you know, this is like the very quick history of what's happened with this project. It was created in 2014 at Facebook. It was open source in 2014. Facebook led all of the efforts pretty much until mid 2019, and now it exists as an independent foundation as part of the Linux Foundation.
So I would say the major updates from the TSC, right, are that so since Osquery has been handed off to TSC, we have restarted development and releases. Like, there are now stable releases, and that's actually a pretty major milestone. So that's kind of the thing that I would say, right? It's like, basically, like, we have begun merging community PRs. Many of them have been merged. Many bug fixes have happened, and we've restarted releases. And like, kind of beyond that, there's a lot of like, we're still trying to figure out what we're all doing, but like, there's a 4.0
Totally.
series, like, that's so big.
Yeah, and I mean, so like, I have a slide where like, of, you know, 6 milestones in the history of Osquery, like 4.0.2 release is like one of those milestones. You know, it's like the community is getting things out. So that's kind of really, in my eyes, that's all there is to say in terms of announcements about what's going on in the project. And then my pitch is get involved with the project. So I'm pitching, you know, come to office hours if you're an organization or an individual that cares about the future direction of Osquery, because we need to get to doing things like developing a roadmap, and those things will be happening. And my other pitch is we now have an avenue for funding, and I'd like to, whenever I can, I am pitching to folks who work at bigger organizations or who are leaders at bigger organizations to, you know, think about how they could sponsor this project so that we could do things like what I was talking about earlier, which would be, you know, having dedicated resources towards addressing these commons issues. So if anyone has other things that you'd like me to mention, feel free. I mean, I'm prefacing this with, you know, I'm not speaking from an official position of the TSC or the Linux Foundation. This is just, you know, what's going on from my perspective and what I think we need.
Kind of unrelated. Do you happen to know if they will upload the recordings somewhere?
Yeah, my understanding is that almost all of the talks will be recorded and they will be made publicly available.
Nice.
And yeah, you know, as far as it goes, I'm excited about the Osquery project's success, and I think that diversifying the community and the engagement and the events and everything, you know, will contribute to the success of the Osquery project. So, you know, I'm excited to be going to this conference and seeing some more ideas about how folks are using Osquery.
Last item. Go on.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention if we can make an action item to solve the Nick question, so we can have him sooner rather than later. If we have to.
I am not aware of any technical capacity Ryan has that we would need to swap out. But I would say the thing to do would be to make a foundation issue, and we can figure that out. Because I feel like kind of anywhere we've thought about Ryan, it's just kind of been Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can create a foundation issue, and if, you know, we can just achieve consensus on that issue, we'll close the issue and you know, make the swap.
If there's even a swap to be made, like I think there's a couple of things, and I think they're separate. And you know, one of them is there any role assignment that one could even move? So, and I'm not sure there is. And another one is like, is there a process for adding people to the TSC, and should we bring Nick through that process? And then another one is, and then if so, should we exit Teddy, or we bring them both in? So I see those as like sort of three separate interconnected things, and we can talk about them all in the same issue. And I agree, we don't need like super formal, like let's write our bylaws level answers here. but
sorry, when you say exit Teddy, do you mean exit Ryan?
I'm not really sure which of them is on the TSC.
I think they both are as of now. Okay. Well, let's discuss some issues, guys. I have to run. I'm excited to hear what the update is on build speed caching, because those builds are slow, and it will be awesome to speed them up. So thanks, Stefano, and I'll check in on the notes later.
Okay, bye. Yeah.
Okay, build speed caching.
Yeah, it was just a mention of something I had a look at. And yeah, last meeting we talked about improving in general build speed through using pre-built libraries. That is still something I have to look into. But something I thought I could actually try and obtain something a bit quicker was looking again into the Mozilla SCC cache implementation of the Linux CC cache, basically, which is in Rust. And I had only one issue, probably due to how our build command line was done, that I fixed. I still have to clean it up and probably at least try to open a PR upstream. But in general, what I've seen is around a 40% improvement, meaning that on my machine, where I have a 4-core physical 8 logical, while an uncached build without SCC cache, it takes like 17 to 18 minutes. That is Osquery with rel with the info, so release plus debug info plus tests. This takes, again, 18 minutes. Cached, it takes 11 or so. And yeah, while the first build instead with SCC cache takes like 2 to 3 minutes more, but yeah, that's only for the first time. And another thing I noticed is that the main driver probably is the linking time. So on Windows, linking is very slow, probably and partially because of NTFS itself, which is a bit slow, because it has to, for each XC, it has to create the PDB file when you build on a rel with debinfo. So those PDB files, summed with the size of the XC executable, is bigger than what Linux has to write with the same build type. So yeah, not only is bigger, but yeah, we know that in general NTFS is a bit slower. So what else?
So maybe just to ask about that quickly, can we just merge and like start using SCC cache?
Yeah, one of the objectives probably is to try to fork. We can fork maybe in our organization the project, so I can put there.
It's a change needed to SCC cache, not to the Osquery code.
Yeah.
Is it a change that they'd be willing to upstream?
I think so. I mean, it's simply that. Yeah, it's just simply that on when you try to build third-party libraries and you use their build system, the third-party library adds its own flags on that command line, and obviously sometimes your project has something to say about those flags and you want to override them. So what end up happening is that you have two versions of the same flag, with the latest flag that overrides the one before that. And SCC cache basically, while parsing, sees the previous flag that says please use external PDBs for each object file instead of embedded as we are now, and doesn't totally consider the other flag which actually overrides that value. And so it ends up failing because it thinks it has to access a shared PDB, and yeah. So in general, I think that this increases their ability to have SCC cache work in different environments. So I hope it's interesting for them.
So maybe they'll take an upstream. If not, I'm definitely in favor of us having an Osquery fork of it, and just our builds can use that. And then I still owe you buckets to think about a source layer, though. Even if we had a source layer, even if we had a pre-built artifact layer, that won't help the link time step, right?
No, but I mean, it's still a good improvement. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at least we can half the time. Yeah. Also, yeah, this we have thought already in the past. We can try to look into merging a bit more the tests so that we make less executable. The other advanced possibility is to try, because I think most of the size of the PDBs are due to templates coming from either Boost or AWS or things like that. We can try to do something advanced, which tries to shorten those symbols. Yeah. I'm not sure if we can do without changing the actual library, because yeah. But those two are the more immediate actionable thing.
Oh, I think just getting SCC cache out and trying to create an artifact store are probably, they seem like the obvious work forward.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Sounds like not. Pleasure talking to everyone. I will create tickets for the Foundation TSC questions. And I think that's the only thing I'm going to commit to doing in the next 10 minutes. I'll try and figure out the bucket side for you pretty soon, though.
I mean, that's fine.
Okay,
Last-
I will
last-
stop
a bit less
recording.
so. Yep.